morning, we have an inspiring story of resilience and purpose. Stephen Benvenisti, who's a Bergen County resident and MADD ambassador, survived a life-altering tragedy when he was struck by a drunk driver while on spring break in Florida. Left in a coma for nearly 2 weeks, he endured a severe traumatic brain injury, intracranial hemorrhaging, and crushed legs. He spent 5 months in the hospital and underwent 15 surgeries. Unable to walk or care for himself, Stephen faced unimaginable challenges, yet he turned all that pain into a powerful mission. Now, as part of a groundbreaking partnership between Mothers Against Drunk Driving and Uber launching this Alcohol Awareness Month, Stephen is helping save lives by sharing his story. Stephen, thank you for joining us today. Good to have you on.
It is my pleasure, and thank you for having me.
You bet.
And
Take us back,
and
Steve. Go ahead. Yeah,
yeah, you
go ahead.
summed it up perfectly. I was actually attending the College of New Jersey, and you may know it also as Trenton State College. But I was on my
Yeah.
final spring break. I was in my senior year, and really life couldn't have been better. I had already been accepted to law school, and I went with my friends from New Jersey on vacation. And while I was walking, little did I know that there was a drunk driver who had just left a bar. All his friends knew he was drinking, and he got behind the wheel of his car. Of course, he didn't have a license, he didn't have insurance, and he drove his car at over 50 miles per hour. And according to witnesses, his lights were off. He was swerving throughout the roadway, and then he went over the double yellow lines and he crashed right into my body. People in the area actually called the police because they heard a weird explosion sound and they didn't know what that was. That was a sound of my head and face going through the outside windshield of his car, and my body
Oh,
was thrown 70 feet before I landed face down in the roadway in a coma. I've since learned just how bad it was. My family was called in Bergen County in the middle of the night. They were actually called by physicians, and just, I can't imagine, and God willing, I will never know what it is like for every parent to get that phone call that we all pray we'll never get from doctors to be told that I was in the deepest possible coma. There's a measurement throughout the world called the Glasgow Coma Score. It goes from 3 to 15, and 15 is full consciousness. I was at the level 3. And if you Google the
oh,
prognosis for someone with a Glasgow level 3 coma, you just don't wake up from that. And the few who have been profoundly disabled. My parents
unreal.
just got a room, yeah, got a room in the hospital and just talked to me, played recordings to me. But I was one of the lucky ones because after almost 2 weeks, I woke up, I survived, I recovered, and I'm here today to talk with you.
Thank God for that. And I'm sure a lot of that may have to do with the stimulation that your parents gave you by the sound. I mean, there's so much to be said for the sound because when you're in a coma, sometimes the
Oh,
hearing is usually
you
still
have,
functioning, right? So that could
I've,
very well have helped bring you out of it.
and that's very interesting because at the time, the medical literature did not show that. And then what had occurred was long after I had recovered, there was a study that was done that showed that yes, this is exactly what you're supposed to do when someone is in a coma. But my family didn't know that at the time. They just did it on their own by playing recordings and talking with me and holding my hand. And when I woke up from the coma, according to my family, I started to talk about what was said to me when I was in the deepest possible coma, when at the time there was no one who believed that you could actually hear what was being said in the outside.
So that you've proved that you've proved them wrong, and now we know. What would you say, Stephen, was the hardest part of your journey, physically and
I think the
emotionally?
hardest part is picture here I was at the College of New Jersey. I was just leading, or I was in a fraternity. I was just really even said to myself, life could not get better than it was for me at the time. And then it was waking up and to realizing everything that had been stolen from me, not just because of my catastrophic fractured legs that needed 15 surgeries to rebuild my legs, not just because it didn't look like I was ever going to be walking again if I was able to even save my legs, but it was because of the prognosis that came with the severe traumatic brain injury. And even in the year 2025, unfortunately, there's no cure for any type of brain injury. And for me, it was a severe traumatic brain injury. I woke up from the coma and I wasn't able to remember if I had breakfast. I wasn't able to articulate my thoughts with words that were coming to me. I was repeating myself constantly. And then friends from college and my girlfriend and my family members, when they would visit me, they knew something was wrong and I knew something was wrong and I didn't know if it would ever get better. So to answer your question, that was without question the hardest part about it. The other hard part was to know that what happened to me was so preventable. I mean, if someone had stopped the drunk driver from getting behind the wheel of his car, that would have stopped this from happening. If there
How
was
about
something
how
like
about just not
Uber at
let
the
him get it? How about just not letting him have a car, knowing the damn guy didn't have a license and had absolutely no business being behind the wheel? I mean, it's just
well,
there's so many levels of how stupid and friends knew he probably didn't have a license. I mean, how do you let a guy you know is unlicensed, uninsured, and a drinker? Oh, yeah, that's just a perfect compilation. Let him get behind the wheel. How would they like it if it was their relative that had happened to them? What happened to you? It's just disgusting. And only because we're
Well,
running
what's
out of
it?
time, I
Yeah.
gotta go ahead. See, I
It's
wanted you
still,
to
it
get to
happens
this.
today. Yeah, all the time. Go ahead.
All
Continue,
the
please.
time. They still don't know. And now we even have the added problem of legalized marijuana. And there's no way to
Mhm.
field test with legalized marijuana. I mean, I see people drifting all over the roads at all hours constantly, and I know damn well they're impaired one way or the other. And it's infuriating. People think, oh, marijuana is so much better. No, you're stoned. You shouldn't be driving.
Right.
What is
Exactly.
talk about the initiative that's going on between MADD and Uber?
Well, before Uber even existed, we would always say to people, you find a designated sober driver. That's what you need to do. If you have a designated sober driver, there will be no more drunk driving crashes. But nowadays, we have designated sober drivers. They're called Uber drivers, and there are
Mhm.
thousands of them on the roadway. And for every single story that we hear, and there's literal carnage on our roadway, every one of them could have been stopped if they simply called an Uber. It is that simple. So now MAD is teaming with Uber so that everyone can have a designated sober driver and they're called an Uber driver. And then when you hear about the data that's happening on our roadways, all of these heartbreaking crashes and all of these unnecessary fatalities could be prevented. And when I speak with audiences, I say with them, do you know, when I started speaking, I would say that we would lose 7,000 people a year, then 10,000 people every single year. But now there's Uber. So do you think fatalities are going up or going down? What would you think? They're going up.
You would think
Here's
going
what we
down. Of
do.
course, they're going up.
Yeah,
Of course, because we
13,000 people on the
you know,
roadways dying.
Steve,
Yeah.
when I was a kid, they didn't have ads for alcohol on TV. Now they do, although that may be changing under this administration because they want to get rid of drug and alcohol advertising. When I was a kid, marijuana was not legalized. Now it is in many states, and so it's like you have the problem every 78 seconds, somebody getting hurt or killed by an
Correct.
impaired driver. So what do? Let's make it easier for everybody to get impaired. It is beyond me. And like you said, it's a solvable problem that
Just make a
everybody turns their
plan
head and
before the
ignores.
night. Right. Make a
Steve, as long
plan
as
before
money
the
is
night.
involved, as long as
Mhm.
money's involved, these morons, they will not get it until it's their family. Unfortunately, it's sad. Anyone has to
Yeah.
suffer, but until it's their family, they just don't give a damn. And it makes me
Yeah.
sick that you had to go
Me
through
too.
what you had to go through, and so
And
many
I thank
people
you.
had to.
And I was one of the lucky
And
ones.
thank God. And thank God you're here to
Yeah.
talk about it. But there's so many.
Thank you.
I have a cousin, by the way. I have to true confessions here. I have a cousin whose parents, this is back in the 70s, parents drove him from New York to Florida, Miami, dropped him off for college, kissed him goodbye, introduced the roommates and everything else. They got back in their car, started driving back. They drove, this is before cell phones, 1970s. They drove all the way to the South North Carolina border, by south of the border. They called their relatives in New York to say, "Oh, we're made it to the south of the border. We'll be home in 12 hours or whatever." And they said, "You don't know what happened? Their son was killed by a drunk driver. He was crossing the street 10 minutes after the parents left him. He was crossing the street to go to a place to have a sandwich, and a drunk driver in a van hit him. He also went about 30 feet, killed. He literally never had a chance to have 1 second of college. And so it's
I,
sensitive for me. It hits home for me. And that's
as a
why
personal injury
I really love
attorney, I represent these families. I just got a case where my client was so tragically injured, and the driver of the car was not only impaired, but had their baby in the car.
it.
This is on New Jersey roadways.
Yeah. We just had a mayor in
Yeah.
one of the towns in northern New Jersey. You know that, who
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Of
stopped
course.
allegedly impaired and with a child in the car. It's so
Mhm.
no matter who you are and where your place in life, wealthy or
Welcome.
not, educated or not, people think I'm fine. No, you're not. And by the way, next time you go to a wedding and you think you could have your 5 glasses of wine over the course of the evening and then still get behind the wheel, no, no. Have the
Plan
one
ahead.
member of
Call
the
an
wedding
Uber.
party. That's it. And you could have all the
Yeah.
fun you want. Nobody
Yeah.
gets hurt. MADD
Right.
Ambassador Steve Benvenisti, we would love to
Thank
have
you.
you back. Thank you for
Thank you.
what you do. And I'm sorry for what you went through. And thank you
And
so
thank you
much
for
for
raising
joining
this
me.
important issue with
You
appreciation.
bet. Very, very important issue. All right. We appreciate you.